Okay, good morning. My name is Dan Moorer. Welcome to this webinar on the Engineering Management Program at the University of Colorado Boulder. Happy to have you here. We have a large number of attendees today, many of you from across the nation, some of you perhaps from other parts of the world, and we're happy to have you join us. The purpose of our webinar this morning is to give you an overview of our engineering management program and perhaps to answer maybe some questions that you have about whether graduate education is for you and whether this is the right school to attend and the right program to be part of. And so that's what we're going to answer today. I'm joined in the studio here by our staff for the program and also Dr. Michael Readey, who will be presenting a little bit later on innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I think you'll find that presentation both exciting and illuminating in terms of some of the courses that we teach here in our program. Before we begin with the formal presentation, I'd like to address a couple of questions that perhaps are resting in your mind. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes looking at graduate education and trying to decide, number one, if I wanted to pursue it, and number two, if it would fit into what was already a very busy lifestyle. Number one, did I want to pursue it? The answer was yes. I recognized that at that point in my career that I needed to expand my knowledge so that I would be perhaps more eligible for promotion, be open to positions of greater responsibility and things such as that. But at the same time, as I had this side speaking to me about the need for a graduate degree, there was this other side of my life that was consumed with family and activities and other responsibilities. And so how would those two things fit together? And so it was a big decision for me to go back for graduate school. I would offer to you that in this program, we recognize that dichotomy, that need to work on education at the same time manage one's life. The fact is that our program is designed to fit that need for all of you. We offer our classes at times that are convenient for you. We have various modes of attending those classes. We have classes that are dedicated to you achieving your success in your career. So we understand where you're coming from, but if you should have questions along those lines, we are going to have a Q&A, a question and answer period a little bit later in the hour, and we'll have an opportunity to address some of those. This is our agenda. I'll be providing about a 10-minute overview of our program, and I think you'll find that informative. I also want to introduce you to Kendra Tebow, who was our graduate advisor, our admissions counselor. Kendra, do you want to come up real quick? You want to say a few words?
Sure. Hi there, I'm Kendra. I will be on the chat if you guys have questions. So I do the admissions and advising for the program. So if you have any questions during that time, just fill it out in the chat and we'll get you some answers.
Very good. Thanks, Kendra. I appreciate that. All right, and we'll also have a spotlight, as I said, on innovation and entrepreneurship, and I know you'll enjoy that. So an introduction to our program. What is our program about? When you leave the time that you spend with us, we are dedicated to your success. When you leave, we want you to be successful. We want you to be able to bypass your contemporaries in the areas of leadership and management. We are a technically oriented program that is, as the name implies, engineering management. So all of our instructors here have a technical background, and have a great deal of leadership and management experience. And they bring that experience to the classroom so that your classes end up being about 50% theory and about 50% actual experience, what to expect where you work. And so, again, the program is designed for you, designed to help you achieve success after you graduate. Engineering management. We're part of the Engineering and Applied Sciences College. We have several departments here that are ranked extremely high across the nation. And we have, it's just an exceptional amount of support that we receive here in the college for our program. What is engineering management? It was recognized a long time ago that engineers needed to understand the environment in which they would be operating. That is the business environment. Have the business acumen to succeed in that environment. And so if one has a technical background, the idea is that we will provide to you the business acumen that you need to be successful. I would offer a story to you about when I completed my graduate education here. I went to a high-tech company. Aerospace was my area of endeavor. And sitting down at the conference room table, I was somewhat surprised that my expertise, the work that I had done for the previous 4 or 5 years, didn't make the agenda at all. Instead, it was about all of the business activities that surrounded the engineering that we were doing, specifically project management, systems engineering, leadership, ethics, customer relations, business development, entrepreneurship, and the like. All of the courses that I wish, all of the knowledge that I wish I'd had before taking that position. And so engineering management is a link, if you will, between the business side and the technical side. A question that might be in your mind is whether to pursue an MBA or a Master's of Engineering. And I'd like to cover some of the points here that you may find interesting. As I've said, our courses are technically oriented. Our faculty, and you might keep this in mind as you look at various programs to attend, our faculty are industry experienced and technically oriented. And the students with whom you'll be working come from industry and business and government, perhaps DOD, the same as you. And so you'll be in the classroom with persons of the same background and same desires and direction as you. For a Master's in Engineering, only 10 courses are required, whereas the usual for an MBA is 16 plus. You'll be able to complete it more quickly, and you'll have an environment in which to work that will fit into your lifestyle. Why engineering management may be right for you. It's designed for people who want to advance their careers, who perhaps have a technical background or desire to work in a technical field, and who want to take on management and leadership roles. For our graduate program, we do offer a Master of Engineering and Engineering Management. It consists of 30 credit hours or 10 courses. 15 are core courses. And we can go into detail on this a bit later. It also requires 15 credit hours in electives for a total of 30 credit hours or 10 courses in our program. In addition to that, there is a requirement for a master's exam that reviews your knowledge that you've gained over the previous time in our program. We also offer graduate certificates. Many of the areas that we offer certificates in are here. Normally our certificates require 3 to 4 courses. I would point out that Michael Readey, who you'll hear from in just a moment, offers a certificate in engineering entrepreneurship. We also offer certificates in project management, which some of you may want to ask about, leadership and management, the quality sciences that we focused on in a previous webinar also offers a certificate, and many others. 3 to 4 courses for our certificates. And we also offer dual degrees. Some of you may have a desire to pursue a technical degree at the same time that you're pursuing your master's degree in engineering management, and have a question as to whether that is possible. And the answer to that question is yes, it is possible. We do offer dual graduate degrees with other engineering departments. And here are the 4 departments: aerospace, computer science, EE, and mechanical engineering. How does the program meet your needs? I mentioned before about the mode by which one might participate in a master's degree with our program. We offer flexible on-campus and online teaching. That is, you have the option of participating in the classroom, or if you prefer, you can participate live in the classroom via a Zoom software, telecommunication software, the same software I believe you may be using today. Or we offer recordings of our classes that you can view at a time of your convenience. The idea being that life is busy. You may already be holding down a full-time job, and you have your other responsibilities. And so this offers you, the third option offers you the opportunity to view the classes, participate in class by watching the videos, and pursue your degree that way. And many of our students choose that. Our course content is indeed broad and deep in the area of leadership and management skills. And so I would encourage you to take a look at the web pages that define the courses that we have. We have a balance of both required and elective courses, so it gives you the opportunity to tailor the program to what you need, what you think you need for your future. And I would point out again that our faculty are academic and industry leaders, many of them with high-level management experience, designed to bring real life into the classroom to broaden your educational experience. This is a quote from one of our recent graduates. And we have persons in our program from a variety of industry and business and government backgrounds. And so that is an overview of our program in terms of general requirements, in terms of why this program may be good for you, and in terms of some of our content. We will have a Q&A a little bit later in the program, but first I want to introduce you to Dr. Michael Readey, who's going to speak on the topic of innovation and entrepreneurship.
Wonderful. Thank you, Professor Moore.
There you go.
Great. Thanks. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar this morning. My name is Michael Readey. I've been an instructor here at CU for just about 3 years now, after spending approximately 25 years in industry in a variety of positions that I'll probably refer to a little bit later on in the presentation. But I'm a materials engineer by background and started my career doing just that, doing engineering work in the material science field, looking at new ways of building components and systems and things along those lines. But then throughout my career, I had a chance to not just be the engineer itself, but then lead various project teams of engineers in developing certain technologies for various applications in the energy field or in the medical field or various types of other industrial applications. And so one of the things that I discovered throughout my career is, as you typically progress from one sort of management position to another, the amount of engineering that you do obviously becomes less, and the amount of people interaction, and the amount of business knowledge that you need to be able to communicate with the rest of your company becomes even more important. And so programs like this, I was really happy to be able to join this a couple of years ago to bring some of the experiences that I've had in my career to share with all of you, but also to learn from some of my peers about some of the best practices that are out there to be able to really take engineers and give them the kind of business background they need to be successful in the field that they're in. So I think this is a wonderful program. I wish a program like this was around when I was in your shoes some years ago, because I think it really helps people figure out not only what is it that I need to do, but it also provides them the confidence to be able to do it in a very positive way. So let me go through some of the things that I've been involved in here at CU. So as Professor Moore mentioned, the way that our program is structured looks something like this. We have a foundational set of courses that give you the core background that you need for everything else that's about to come. We have a whole series of technical electives. But if you're so inclined, you're able to take several different courses in certain specialization areas, such as leadership and ethics, project and portfolio management, quality sciences, research methods, in the area that I'm responsible for, innovation and entrepreneurship. Now, when we mean entrepreneurship, we mean both the kinds of entrepreneurship in starting a new venture, or the intrapreneurship, also known as corporate entrepreneurship, of the sorts of things that you might do working for your company if you're interested in starting a new product line, for instance. So entrepreneurship we use in sort of a broad sense of the term, as opposed to sort of the way that people think about this historically. So let me tell you a little bit about what we do in this particular specialization, and then we can answer some questions that you might have a little bit later on. Well, the thing that's interesting about entrepreneurship is that it is everywhere right now. It doesn't take a look very far to see that entrepreneurship is something that you hear almost every day. There are magazines that are dedicated to it. Perhaps some of you are big fans of the Shark Tank episodes on TV that we get a chance to hear about bright ideas and how they're going to change the economy. And then even here in Boulder, perhaps you're familiar with something known as Justin's Nut Butter that was started right here in the Boulder's Farmers Market by an enterprising young entrepreneur that after a 15-year overnight success story ended up selling his business to Hormel Foods for $286 million. So that's sort of the sort of thing that we all think about when we consider entrepreneurship, starting in your garage, building something, and then turning that into a very successful commercial venture. But what's different about our program is that it's very focused on the kinds of things that we do as engineers. And one of the things that I've learned in talking to a number of people is that engineers aren't always super confident that they too can be engineers. So the question that we try to make sure we answer fully in these series of courses is, can engineers be entrepreneurs as well? And I can assure you, and I'll demonstrate this with some real interesting examples, absolutely, yes, we can. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what the program is all about. We have an approach, our approach to entrepreneurship is a little bit different than what I would call the traditional approach to entrepreneurship. The traditional way that business schools often talk about entrepreneurship is they immediately start talking about building the business plan. So you'll get into the class and the professor will say, these are the things that are really important in your business plan. Go spend the next 3 weeks in the library doing market research on the kinds of things that you think your product is going to be sort of sold or interesting for the various customers that are out there. Well, a lot of research has shown over the last several decades that real entrepreneurs never end up writing a business plan as the starting point to their business. So we decided we're going to get rid of this idea and do what really happens in the real world of building a company. And that looks something like this. We start with what's known as the entrepreneurial mindset. Now for me, what this means is that engineers aren't always that confident that they have either the skills or the sort of emotional fortitude to be able to take on an entrepreneurial activity. So we spend a lot of time in the first couple of weeks of our class just getting our own heads in the game to convince ourselves that we too have the capabilities to be able to be a successful entrepreneur. Then we talk about the innovation process, because once our head is kind of in the game, the other thing that we have to do is to come up with an idea that we think the market's going to want. Somebody is going to buy the product or service that we're thinking about. So the question then becomes, well, what is that product or service that we really might want to do? And so we spend several weeks talking about the innovation process itself, using various types of techniques that are out there to really get creative about what might the customers want and what is it that we're really good at, and how can I bring those two things together in a successful product or service venture. Then once we have the idea, we start talking to customers about it. The idea known as customer development. How do we get people to give us feedback on whether our idea is something that's really viable commercially in the marketplace? And we spend a lot of time discussing how does one get that kind of customer feedback? And I'll give you an idea about that in just a second. We then start building prototypes and do something called the minimum viable product, which is how do we spend the least amount of money to be able to get the most amount of information out of the product or service idea that we have in mind, and building not just the kind of prototype that we engineers think about, but the kind of prototyping that we need from an entrepreneurial perspective to get the kind of feedback we want about whether customers really want this. And that's a little bit different than what most of us are used to in the engineering prototyping phase, where we're really looking at sort of the technologies and how do we build all this stuff up. Then finally, we focus on how do we actually pull all this together and launch a business. Where does the funding come from, and how does one actually do launch of a business? And then we see how we can pull all this together. One of the things that I focus on in the way that we teach this whole program is action over analysis. Now, we certainly will end up doing things like market research and building prototypes, but really it's all about the doing as opposed to thinking about the doing. The best way, and this is where all the research says, that successful entrepreneurs don't think too much about what they're doing. They get out there and try stuff. And if it works, they keep going. And if it doesn't work, they step back, they rethink about things, and they start a new direction. And so for us, it's about action over, at least perhaps over-analysis in this case. So what do we talk about in the entrepreneurship and innovation sorts of courses? We start by developing the entrepreneurial mindset. Again, this is all about giving engineers the confidence that they too can go ahead and be successful in starting a new venture. We talk about product ideation using techniques known as design thinking or human-centered design or design-driven innovation, all these tools that are available to us to figure out how can we come up with the right ideas that we think customers will want. And then we get right into the customer and market side of things. Who are the customers that are going to be interested in our product, and how many of them are there, and how can I contact them to get some feedback about the product the product idea that I might have in mind. We also spend quite a lot of time talking about something known as business models, which really is the big picture of how are we going to run the business. Everything from how are we going to sell the product? Is it going to be sold online, or is it going to be sold through a retail outlet? Are we going to make the product ourselves, or are we going to have an extended supply chain be able to help us out with this? We work through all those details to figure out what really makes the most sense. We do a lot of digital and physical prototyping, because in the end, you have to get some feedback from customers, and the best way to do that is not talking about your idea, but actually letting them play with it in some form and get an idea of what it is that you're trying to do. Then we do cover some of the formal stuff associated with entrepreneurship as well. What is the right kind of legal organization structure that you should really have? Should it be an LLC, or should it be an Inc., or something even a little bit different from all of that? We talk about the pros and cons of all the different organizational structures that are out there and what might make the most sense for your idea. And then finally, funding and financing. How is all this going to happen? Where's the money going to come from to launch your business at various stages of where you are? And then once you're successful, and Google calls you up and says, I'd like to buy your business, we go through a couple of techniques to figure out, well, what's your business actually worth? So when Google does call up, you can figure out whether or not their offer to buy your business is the right number or not. So we cover the whole gamut, from everything in your head to getting that down to what happens when you get that great phone call down the road in terms of the exit strategy. What do we actually do? And this is something that's also different in our program that I think works out really well for people that could be distributed all over the country, if not all over the world, like you might be. We start with an idea, meaning we start with a project-based approach where you come up with an idea for a business that you might be interested in launching. Now, this is a little bit different than other approaches to entrepreneurship because they often do a team-based approach where you and your teammates can go through and work through a lot of the details of building a venture. But then, of course, after the class ends, the team goes away and you're not really sure what you get out of it. What's an advantage to our approach is you take your idea, and like many other entrepreneurs in the real world, you're the one that goes through and does most of the legwork to figure out if it's really going to be a viable idea or not. Then we have this idea. What do we do with it? We take it to customers. We physically go out and talk to potential customers about whether our idea solves a particular problem that they might have. We start that by asking them, do you have this kind of problem that perhaps you're looking for a different solution than what you're using today? And then we can offer them the kinds of information that we're talking about to see what happens. We then build some prototypes because based on the information that we've just learned from talking to customers, real people, we can then figure out, well, what is it that we have to build in order to satisfy the requirements that those customers might have? So we do some actual construction of very simple prototypes that we can do to be able to demonstrate in a relatively rough way, but at least give customers an idea of what our idea is and whether it will benefit them or not. So once we have evidence, and we'll go through this iterative loop several times if necessary, once we have evidence that customers really like the direction that we're heading, we take it to the next step, which means let's think about how we can form a business around this idea. And we use various business models. This one, for example, is an idea called the business model canvas, which is used very often in the entrepreneurial world to characterize what's your value proposition, for instance. Who are the customers that you're actually talking to? How are you going to make money in this kind of a business? And what does your cost structure look like? All these elements to the business model. We look at each one of these elements and we put some ideas together about how we will run this business. And then with those assumptions in mind, we go back to customers and talk to them about, well, how might you purchase a product like this? And then we see if that's in alignment with some of the assumptions that we've had about sales channels, for instance. That's kind of an interesting way to bring this all together as well. At the end of the class, one thing that's really important is that we all have to get very comfortable with talking about our idea to other people, whether it's the 60-second elevator pitch or whether it's more of a 10 or 15-minute speech to investors or a pitch to investors about what our idea is. So a big part of the class is to develop and present the pitch, to present or to sharpen your speaking skills and to gain confidence about your idea. Now, if you're physically in the classroom, you get to do this just like I'm doing right now. If you are out there in the online world, then you do something like this woman did, where she created a video with the pitch, and then we show it in the classroom just like you're seeing now on a webinar, and everybody gets a chance to review her pitch and then provide feedback to her on things they really liked and things that she should possibly do to improve upon it. And then she can take that information and refine her pitch even more so for when that time comes to really make that pitch to potential investors that are out there in the world. So our approach is what I would define as a modern, practical approach to building a company, from developing the entrepreneurial mindset through presenting a very compelling business pitch. But the real test that I like to look at the end of all this is, does it really matter? Will this change people's lives or not? So let me give you a couple of examples of things that have happened over the last 2 years when we've really started to adopt this approach to entrepreneurship. A couple of years ago, I had some students from the mechanical engineering department here at CU that were doing soft materials development for robotic applications. 4 of them took the class. We took their idea of soft materials, which are what these things are right here, and we said, let's try to build a business around that kind of technology. Now, they already knew they were focused on the robotics market. So what we helped them to do was put the pieces together to build this into a viable company. At the end of the class, the 4 of them, along with their advisor, started the company, Artemis Robotics, Inc. And maybe you've heard about these folks, but they are very prevalent in the robotics world right now. Still very early stage investment, but they have a lot of people excited about the technology that they're about to get into. There's another company that was started called Space Lab Technologies. Now, this is really fascinating. For me, one of the women in the class was very involved in the aerospace world. She was an aerospace engineer with several years of experience, and she had this idea at the beginning of the class that if we're actually going to travel to Mars, then people need to eat along the way. We just can't eat squeeze tube pizza forever. What are we going to do? And so she had this concept of doing sort of a little micro farm en route to Mars, and how might that work? She discovered that there are these materials called water lentils, which looks a lot like a microgreen, that have a very high protein content, and nobody in the world was really looking at these water lentils as a way of sort of helping people eat along the way on long-term journeys like this. So her whole idea was, let me try to put together a water lentil project that could be used in growing these on space voyages over long periods of time. She built the entire business pitch around this using a number of examples that she actually put together in her garage from a prototyping standpoint. The pitch went really well. People really liked the idea. Interestingly, NASA came out with a small business innovative research proposal grant process shortly after the class. She took the business pitch that she used for her project, repackaged that as a proposal to NASA, and within a couple of months received $150,000 to take this idea and explore it even more comprehensively for NASA's long-term space applications. So that's what led to the development of Space Lab Technologies, LLC. Another student who was really good in software development was also associated with various school departments in Colorado. And one of the things that he found out by working within the various educational components is when you're building a new building, for instance, a new school or a new gymnasium, people often want to know where's all the money going to make that project work, and how is the project actually coming along in terms of its projected timeline. He developed a software tool that actually goes into various databases, extracts information, and provides this online tool to people to give them an idea of how's the project progressing and where are our tax dollars going. He's now launched that commercially and has several school districts around the country interested in adopting this for their applications as the starting point to perhaps other types of municipalities that might want to take this on and show their populations and citizens what it is that they're actually doing. Finally, another company that just got started within the last 6 months is known as Beck Sustainable Cultures. Now, here's a person that came into the class starting in our course in product development without any background in any of this, came up with the idea after watching a couple of documentaries on ocean plastic pollution that one thing that she could be interested in doing is integrating high-end fashion that's also very eco-sustainable. She came up with the idea of compostable flip-flops made out of materials that are industrially compostable and yet have this very high-end fashion look to them. Because as it turns out, one of the big components of ocean plastic pollution are the billions of rubber synthetic material flip-flops that end up being used for short periods of time and end up floating out there into the ocean ways. By coming up with this, she found out that there is this real demand by people that care about these kinds of things for products that really have an eco-friendly sense to them. She's now contacted several suppliers. She and her husband have now begun doing prototype development of various designs of flip-flop materials that meet all of their eco requirements. And now the business is looking really interesting. I think within the next 6 months, she'll probably have something to be able to show several potential customers, this is what we're talking about. So this is just a few examples of what happens in a course like this. By being able to take an idea that you're interested in and seeing if, does this really make sense from a business standpoint, you can decide by the end of the course whether or not this is something really worth pursuing or not. And in many cases, a lot of the students have either said, you know, I really like this idea, but I found some gaps in kind of the commercial side, so I need to work on that a little bit more. And some people said, this idea is perfect, it's really going to go, and we're going to start a business right away to be able to take this to the next level. And that's really rewarding from my standpoint, because we've now given people that at the beginning of the course weren't really sure they had any of the skills to do all this, and by the end of the course they were launching businesses, talking to customers, talking to suppliers, and understood the financial elements around building a business all on their own. So that's been really great. So this is the way that we try to take almost all of our courses, make them very practical for the students that we have in mind. We want this to be important and relevant to you in your career, and this is just one idea of how we try to do that. I wrap up the course with this kind of quote, which I just think is great. The idea being that if you don't build your dream, then someone else will hire you to help them build theirs. And you get to make the decision which path you would like to go take. And our goal is to give you the skills to be confident in whichever decision you want to go make. So with that, I'd like to open it up for Q&A. And I think, Kendra, you're going to help us with this process.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Michael. That was great. All right. So, Michael, that was a great overview on innovation and entrepreneurship. I personally have not taken that course, but after hearing that, I think I'd like to sign up here pretty soon. Sounds pretty exciting. I could have used that knowledge in a previous life. I started a couple of companies, and I did not follow that route that you described, and I wish I had. It probably would have been more successful more quickly and with a good bit less pain, but exciting class. So this portion, ladies and gentlemen who are watching via Zoom, this is the third component of our presentation for you here today. It's the opportunity for you to ask questions about your future and what you would like to pursue. So this is, going back for a graduate degree is a significant step in one's career, one's educational work, expanding one's knowledge, and it should not be undertaken lightly. And so we work in that field. The reason that Michael and I and the other members of our staff who are here in the room, the reason we exist is to help our students be successful once they graduate, either with a certificate or with a degree. So that's why we exist. That's our job. And so we're here to help you, and we're open for any questions that you may have. So I think, Kendra, are you taking any questions, or do you have any for us right now?
Yeah, so one just came in. Is it necessary to have a bachelor's degree in an engineering discipline to qualify for the engineering management program?
Good. Do you want to address that, or do you want me to take it?
You can go ahead.
Okay. So the answer to your question, the question was, does one need to have an engineering degree, an engineering undergraduate degree, in order to participate in this graduate program? The short answer is no. You don't need to have that technical degree in order to participate in the program. If you have experience, and there's some subjective areas here, but if one has experience working in a technical field, for example, the best project manager I ever saw in aerospace had his undergraduate degree in history. So what's up with that? Our program is about leadership and management. And I think you'd agree, for all of you watching and for everybody here, I think you'd agree that the world needs more of that, more expertise in those two areas. And so we've not confined the program to those who have a bachelor's in a technical degree. If one were to join our program with a degree in a non-technical field, we do offer a course that helps one to grapple with the fundamentals of engineering so that the remainder of the classes that you take you'll find them both relevant and you'll understand the fundamentals necessary to appreciate them. So we do have a course set aside for that. And the fact is, we do have a good number of people in our program who are pursuing their master's degree in engineering who do not have that bachelor's degree in engineering. I hope that answers your question, Michael.
Yes, if I can add to that as well. We certainly try to gear many of our courses to those people that are in technical fields. And as it turns out, many of those people in technical fields also come with a technical background. But just as an example, the case I just gave about Beck Sustainable Designs, the woman that came up with this concept of a compostable flip-flop, actually has a political science degree and is doing work in a field related to financial development, completely unrelated to the kinds of things that might go on in an aerospace industry, for instance. And so she was able to get into the field, and even though she had very little confidence that she had the skills necessary, it didn't take very long for her to come up with the self-confidence to be able to figure out what it was that she was really good in, and then take that idea to the next step. So I think it's certainly wide open for the kinds of backgrounds that people have in our program, and we welcome a lot of diversity in the kinds of experiences that people can bring.
Good, thank you. Kendra?
Do you all want to talk a little bit about how this program works for like working professionals? A little bit?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the question is, how does this program work with respect to working professionals? And I touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but I'll expand on it a bit now. The first thing I would say is that overall the program is designed around the needs of the working professional, period. That kind of defines it totally. Our classes are offered at a time that will not interfere with your work. And most of our classes, in fact, almost all of them, are offered at starting at 5:30 during the fall and spring semesters. We start a bit earlier in the summertime, but about 5:30, which is after normal business hours. And so that's good. It's possible to participate if you happen to be at work. Many of our students are, for example, at various places across the country. They want to participate live in our classes. They sign in via the same Zoom software that you're using right now, and they participate live in the class. Those who have work events, I think Michael would agree that if you have a work event or a meeting or some other event that you need to attend that interferes with class, you take the time that you need and you can watch the video, class video at a later time. The practical exercises and the discussions are designed around real-life application and are designed so that if you're watching by video, you'll still be able to get from the class what you needed in terms of the learning objectives. many of our students, in terms of working professional, many of our students receive funding from the business where they work, and that may be a possibility wherever you work at. Many of our students are taking advantage of tuition assistance right now. And lastly, I would say the focus in our classrooms is on what you are experiencing as a manager or leader in your business or industry where you work, or what you may experience as a leader and manager in the future. And our instructors are all industry and business experienced, leadership experienced in those areas. So everything is, to summarize, I end with what I began with, and that is that everything we do in the program is designed around the working professional. So thank you for that question. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, just to echo Professor Moore's point, the mechanics of our program are built for the working professional. And what I mean by the mechanics are how you actually get access to lectures. If you're here in Boulder, then you can be a part of the classroom in that environment. If you are a distance student, you can watch these lectures live from wherever you might be, or you can watch the recorded lecture whenever it's really convenient for you. And I have a number of students in several different time zones that end up watching the videos oftentimes Saturday mornings at 6 o'clock before the kids get up, because that's the best time for them to sort of catch up on where things are going. And that's perfectly acceptable for all of us. So the mechanics, we try to be very flexible in how one actually gets access to not only the professors, but the lectures and everything else. From my own personal perspective, and I think I represent a lot of our faculty, we know where you are in your career right now. You're not looking for a highly theoretical program to learn about what's the latest research necessarily. We hope to bring that into the classroom and to give you some very applied sort of skills and tools that you can use in your job right now and in the job you're going to get in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years. So we try to be very practical in our approach to all of this that really helps you in your job as sort of a burgeoning engineering manager, and perhaps even something even beyond that, like director of engineering or maybe vice president of engineering. We hope to prepare you for those kinds of positions at some point in your career.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you. Kendra?
So each class meets once a week for 2.5 hours, but can you guys talk a little bit about the workload beyond the class time?
Mike, you want to
I
touch
know
on
it
that?
varies.
Sure, it varies a lot depending on the kind of course, whether it's more quantitative or more, let's say, subjective kinds of course. The kinds of courses I teach tend to be a little bit more quantitative, so we spend a lot of time calculating things like net present values and other sorts of financial information. But I would say the experience I have with my coursework is outside of the 2.5-hour lecture, and we can talk about that because there are generally several breaks within that time frame, is that there's usually some reading involved that might be a couple of hours, and then there's usually an assignment, if probably not every week, but I would say for me every other week or so, that involves some type of an activity, whether it's building a prototype or whether it's sort of putting together the customer persona about who your customers might be. And so that may take another couple of hours. I would say one expectation could be somewhere between, let's say, 4 to 6 hours, maybe that much outside of the classroom a week. I don't know if that's consistent.
I would agree. I would agree.
That sounds about right to me.
Good. Thank you for that question.
So what would the degree give students beyond like what a certificate might give them in your?
Okay, say that again.
So instead of, a student just pursuing a certificate, what would the degree give them beyond the certificate?
Good question. I'll take a shot at that. Okay, so the question is certificates versus degree. So one gets a certificate, and what are the benefits of that? And one gets a degree, and what are the benefits of that? And what's the difference? Here's what's happening with the certificates and the degree. The certificates exist as a subset of the courses that we offer in our program so that one can specialize in a certain area. And I mentioned that in my briefing earlier in quality systems, for example, understanding quality or building a product so that definition of quality, build a product so that it precisely meets the needs of the customer. Project management and other areas. We offer certificates in those areas so that a person can focus and take the courses that we offer in project management, or all the courses we cover in quality sciences, or all the courses, or many of the courses that Michael offers in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation. And one specializes. So is that good? Yes, absolutely. The fact that you have that certificate can go onto your transcript from the university, and that then becomes part of your resume, and that then helps you somewhere in the future. The degree, on the other hand, is designed to give you a broad spectrum of courses, still allowing you to focus, but gives you the broad spectrum of courses that our alumni tell us and that business leaders tell us are important for a manager, or as Michael said, even an entry-level director position needs in order to be successful. And so you get the breadth of knowledge there, and that of course has a much more huge impact on one's transcript, your resume, and when applying for new positions. I would offer this up in conclusion. If you have a bachelor's degree right now, then having either the certificate or the degree will be a real leg up in terms of your next position or seeking promotion or seeking a new position or something like that. I have hired many graduates in my work before I came to the program here, hired many graduates of CU. And I hired many people with very strong technical backgrounds. But at the job fairs that my company ran, if someone showed up who had a certificate or a degree in another field, especially leadership and management, that person was then sent to another interviewer for special attention. Why? Because that's the kind of person that business and industry want. That's what we wanted where I worked. We wanted people with technical background or some undergraduate degree, but augmented, made stronger by a master's of engineering and engineering management, because we know that they have the management and leadership skills to put them in a variety of places in our company, and we know they'll be successful in working together as part of a team. Makes a big difference.
So as a follow-up to that, if your end goal was to create your own company, would the certificate program be better suited for that?
It would certainly help you get started. For the entire program, I think, just as Professor Moore said, the way I view the difference between the program versus the certificate is the certificate allows you to do a deep dive into something that you're very interested in, while the program gives you a much broader foundation to how to implement a lot of those things in an industrial context. So for instance, you don't have to take a finance course to be able to get the certificate in entrepreneurship, and yet that would really be helpful to understand the financial elements of what it really takes to run a business once you get it off the ground. And so I think from that standpoint, you can certainly do it, but I think the program allows a much broader perspective on how to be successful in many different ways, from not just how do I create a business, but to the idea of how do I manage the people inside that business, which is another set of courses that we offer.
Good.
Yeah, and as I mentioned in the chat, you can also start with a certificate and then move to the degree.
Absolutely, yes.
So
yes.
we have a lot of students that end up doing that. So.
Thanks, Kendra.
Could you guys speak to what kind of success students have had once they're done with the program? I mean, Michael, you kind of mentioned some of your students, but I didn't know if you guys had any other anecdotal.
You've talked about, I'll say a few words on that one, and then Michael, you may have other comments there. So inevitably, as working in this area in academia, after Michael and I have spent a good bit of our professional lives in industry, we certainly enjoy the feedback that we get from our alumni who write us after they depart. And I keep a book in my office, a notebook with emails that I receive from alumni on how they've done and how the program has been beneficial to them. I would offer these general comments. Number one, the comments are always positive. And just as a side note, we also query our alumni from time to time on how we should modify our program to make it even more precisely targeted on the success that everyone wants to achieve professionally. But the comments are positive across the board, and the students, this is generally what I get. I was able to apply almost immediately the things that I learned in the program, or the things that I learned in your class. And Michael is nodding because I think you probably have heard the same thing. We were able to apply it almost immediately. And this is, I would offer this up as a discriminator, that when you take a course, especially part of a graduate program, we believe it's important that you get not only the theoretical, if you will, or what things should look like out in the world, which Michael talked about, but also what will one, not only what they should look like, but what they do look like. What will you experience when you're implementing your leadership or your entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, if you will, in a larger company? What will that look like? What will you experience? How might it benefit you? And I think for that reason, our students write us to say that they were able to put to use almost immediately what they learned. Michael, you want to add to that?
A couple of specific examples that might be of interest. So the examples I cited a little bit earlier are about people that had a chance to pursue their own idea about whether this was a good business opportunity or not. The other approach is, how do I take an idea within the company that I'm already working for and try to launch that within the context of the existing firm? And we follow a very similar kinds of approach, where you take an idea, not so much that you think is terribly interesting to you, but that you think is terribly interesting to you and the company that you're working in, and then you go through a lot of the same steps that any other entrepreneur would go through. You talk to other people in the organization, in marketing, in finance, in, let's say, the manufacturing side of things. So this means the engineer gets out of the office and gets a chance to interact with lots of different people throughout the organization. And that does several things. One, people get a chance to meet you, which is always a good thing. But when you start taking your idea and running it by all these different people, ultimately going up the chain a little bit to get approval to take this project further, I can name countless examples where the people that had that idea and ran through this project, the project was then presented to the senior management of the company. It might have been approved. In several cases, these projects were approved for funding, and that person was promoted to be the program manager or project leader of that particular project. And that certainly was a rewarding process as well. One specific example is that we had a student from Mexico who was involved in the Mexican automotive components industry, had an idea for a new direction that his company could take, and it was somewhat of a pretty sort of big change for that particular organization. But he put together a very solid pitch of why this new direction would be so important, and he incorporated all of the important elements and data to show why that would be so important, made that presentation to senior management. It was approved, and he was then promoted to lead that new effort for the organization. So this goes back to something I said a little bit earlier, where we try to keep this program very applied and to benefit you directly in the job that you have, in the job that you would like to have in the company that you're working in.
Okay, and one other note I would add to on top of what Michael said is that my most two recent letters that I've received have been from one young man and one young woman who were in transition between jobs, and that they were able to land a job at a salary much higher than what they'd expected based on having this program behind them. So I think we are pretty much out of time. We've had an hour with you. Look, Professor Readey and myself both want to say thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. Our staff here feels the same way. We're dedicated to your success should you decide to come this direction for your master's degree. Kendra, have we provided to everyone your email? So Kendra is our graduate advisor. Be happy to answer any questions. And by the way, if you'd like to, you'll be talking with Kendra, but if you'd like to talk with me about career options and options related to having an engineering management degree, where you might go if you're at a turning point in your career, most of the counseling that I do is in that line, and so I would be happy to talk with you should you decide to give us a call. I think that's about it, so thank you so much, and best of luck to you.